Consider this. In major events, it's often the small details that can make or break them. Take, for instance, the 1986 Challenger disaster, where a cheap O-ring led to the loss of 7 lives and hundreds of millions of dollars. Similarly, a tiny blood clot, barely visible under a microscope, can be fatal by blocking blood flow to a critical part of the brain. Even a small patch of ice on the road can cause a vehicle to spin out of control and result in a deadly crash. The list goes on. Seemingly insignificant factors can have devastating consequences for significant endeavors. Marriage certainly falls into the category of important undertakings. I, for one, hold my marriage in high regard. Married for just over 8 years to my lovely wife, April, we have 2 amazing boys, Chris and Charles. While I didn't earn a college degree, my skills as a mechanic have provided us with a comfortable life in a spacious home. Despite the long hours I put into my job, the financial stability it brings makes it worthwhile. My marriage has always been the highlight of my life, and I've worked diligently to support my family. Unfortunately, it's often the small things that can unravel such significant commitments. In my case, it was a tiny blood vessel in my brain that caused the downfall. Its proximity to another vessel led to swelling, triggering a debilitating migraine headache. I experienced one such episode on a particularly fateful day. The symptoms were familiar: sensitivity to light, escalating sounds, and unbearable smells. The sudden onset of excruciating pain caught me off guard. Without my Imitrex inhaler, I had no means to alleviate the agony. While I had pills on hand, they weren't as effective and would take time to ease the pain to a manageable level, rendering me unable to work. I stumbled into my boss's office and delivered the grim news. He immediately sprang into action, summoning his secretary Penny and instructing her to get me home safely, insisting that I not drive for heaven's sake. "Go now," he urged. With Penny's assistance, my boss carefully guided me out of the office and down the hallway towards the exit. Once outside, Penny helped me lean against the wall, shielding my eyes from the harsh light as she made her way to her car. I kept my eyes shut tightly and pressed my hands against my temples, trying to dull the throbbing pain. As we drove, my vision blurred, and the light became unbearable, forcing me to keep my eyes shut. The sounds around me turned into an overwhelming buzz, and the foul smell made my stomach churn. Thankfully, Penny knew the way to my house, so I didn't need to give directions. It felt like an eternity, but eventually she pulled up outside my home, helped me out of the car, and guided me inside. I followed her lead, barely able to walk on my own. Once in the kitchen, I instructed Penny to retrieve her inhaler from the refrigerator. She placed it in my hand, held it steady as I administered it into my nose, inhaling deeply as the medication entered my bloodstream. Then I asked her to assist me to the living room adjacent to the kitchen and help me onto the sofa. I requested that she draw the blinds and turn off all the lights, which she promptly did. After a few minutes, I could already sense some relief creeping in, so I assured Penny that she could leave. Gratefully, I thanked her for her help and welcomed the peace and quiet as she departed. I must have drifted off to sleep quickly as the pain eased, because I woke later to the sound of voices. The room was shrouded in darkness, signaling that it was likely later in the day when I recalled my surroundings. Instantly, I realized the pain had vanished, leaving me feeling sore but relieved from the remnants of the migraine. Taking a moment to sit up cautiously, I waited, half expecting the pain to return, but it didn't. She had left. Thank God. In the dimness, I recognized the voices of my wife, April, and her neighbor friend, Robin. It seemed they were unaware of my presence, given the darkness and the still-off lights. Perhaps April assumed I was resting after coming home early, though my car wasn't parked in the driveway. She probably hadn't realized I was here at all. Maybe I could surprise them both. I rose quietly, planning to sneak to the door and then make my presence known. But as I tuned into their conversation, "Come on, April. How was it? Was it as good as before? Give me the details, girl." "It was amazing. I felt like I was in heaven. Even better than last time, I swear. Almost mind-blowing. The best physical engaging ever." "Better than with Chris? Better than your husband?" "Hell yes. I adore Chris, but he never made me feel like that. Never. I wouldn't let him do those things. He'd think I'm a strumpet. But Carl, he knows, and I like it. Can't wait for next time." "Aren't you afraid Chris will find out? Have you considered the consequences?" "Chris will never know, and even if he did, so what? He's too nice to leave me. He wouldn't risk losing the kids. I'd take them in a heartbeat with a good lawyer." "This isn't like you, April. It's worrying. I think you're making a big mistake." "I love Chris, truly, but I won't give up what I have with Carl. I want both. The passion with Carl and the love with Chris. I need both, and I won't let go." I've had my fill. Though the migraine subsided, the ache in my heart was far worse. It gripped me so tightly that my stomach knotted, and each breath felt like a struggle. A ringing filled my ears and my pulse thundered in my head. Fear surged through me as if a heart attack loomed, and I clung to the doorframe until some semblance of calm returned to my body. Still, I kept my presence hidden, but with each returning moment of control, fury simmered within me, threatening to boil over. With resolve, I straightened and stepped into the illuminated kitchen, shattering the silence. Robin was the first to notice me, her eyes widening in shock as she fell silent. April, catching Robin's reaction, turned to see me, her expression shifting from contentment to astonishment, then to dread and finally to anger, all in an instant. Pushing her chair back, April rose to confront me. "How much did you hear? Why were you lurking and spying on me?" she demanded. I met her gaze in silence, then glanced at Robin, who wasted no time in excusing herself. "I need to go. Pete and I can take care of the boys if you need time. I'll call you later," she said before hurrying out the side door. I watched her departure wordlessly. Left alone, I turned my attention back to April, once the woman I cherished unconditionally for 8 blissful years. 8 years I thought would stretch into eternity, where we'd grow old together. But tonight, that expectation shattered. There would be no forever for us. April ended it all tonight. "Where are the boys? What were you up to while you were having your fun with your lover? Did you even think about them, or were you too busy enjoying yourself with someone else while leaving them unattended?" Now, I'm composed and collected. The pain still lingers, sharp and deep. It'll take a while for it to ease. April's face twisted with anger, masking her beauty with ugliness. Perhaps that mask was the real April, hidden beneath the surface all along. She retorted, "The boys are with Carly. Robin and I went shopping, and Pete watched over them. And I wasn't with anyone else. Just Robin." With that statement, she seemed to feel victorious. The anger on her face morphed into satisfaction. Finally realizing I'd been at home, she inquired, "What are you doing here? Where's your car? And why were you sitting in the dark? Were you spying on me? Trying to catch me in the act?" "I came home early with a terrible migraine. George asked Penny to drive me home because I couldn't handle the light. I took my Imitrex and fell asleep. I've been here ever since." A queasiness churned in my stomach, and a strong urge to vomit surged through me. I rose and hurried to the bathroom. "Your voices woke me, and what I heard made me sick. I need the bathroom." With those words, I dashed to the bathroom, attempting to expel the contents of my stomach. It wasn't entirely successful, but my body certainly tried its best. I settled onto the bathroom floor, finding relief as my body gradually relaxed against the cool porcelain. Finally, my stomach calmed, and my breathing steadied. The sweat on my face dried as the nausea faded away. After a few moments, I rose, splashing water on my face and rinsing out my mouth. Once the trembling subsided and I regained some composure, I returned to the kitchen, where April sat gazing out the window. "I'm going to fetch the boys and put them to bed tonight." Brushing past her, I exited, making my way next door to the Andersons. Pete and Robin Anderson were not only our neighbors, but also our closest friends. We had shared countless evenings together, chatting and enjoying drinks. Best friends, I bitterly mused. I wondered what Pete knew. I should have asked. Knocking on their back door, I entered to find Robin seated at the kitchen table, engaged in conversation with her husband. I sensed she had told him. He looked up with pity in his eyes as I entered, while Robin appeared visibly uneasy. "I've come to get the boys. Are they ready to head home?" I bypassed Pete, heading to the living room where I presumed the boys were with Carly, their teenage daughter. They were huddled over a puzzle, Carly watching over them. As I entered, she greeted me with a smile. "Hey, Mr. Phillips, are you here for them?" Upon my nod, she said, "I'll grab their jackets." I stood there watching them, overwhelmed by a wave of sadness. These scenes, once filled with everyday joy, now bore the mark of infidelity, the innocence of family life shattered by the selfishness of adults. In many cases, irreparably so. This felt like one of those times. "Thanks, Carly. I'll be in the kitchen when they're ready." I returned to the kitchen, where Petey and Robin remained seated. I glanced at Robin, then at Petey. "Did you both know? Were you aware she cheated on me? Pete, did it bring you some twisted satisfaction knowing while we were together? Did it give you some sick thrill?" My anger fueled my words, harsher than necessary, but I needed answers from my dear friends. I should have sensed something. Pete shot a glance at Robin, his anger evident, before replying, "I swear, buddy, I had no clue. If I had known, I'd have told you right away. I can't believe my wife knew and kept it from me. It's despicable. You don't deserve this. I won't apologize to her, but I'm here for you if you need me." His gaze hardened as he looked at his wife. I believed him. He would have confided in me if he had known. So that was Robin and April's secret. "Thank you, Robin," I sneered. "Thanks for making me a laughingstock. A betrayed man. A fool who didn't need to know his wife was fooling around with another guy. I hope that sits well with you, knowing what you knew while thinking of me." I turned as I noticed Carly approaching, hastily putting on a smile as the boys emerged, each clutching a cookie. I silently prayed Carly hadn't overheard my last words, but the look on her face suggested otherwise. This marked the last time Robin would spend with my boys. That much I vowed. I didn't know how, but I'd figure it out. We came in through the back door, and the boys dashed upstairs to change for dinner. I crossed the empty kitchen into the dimly lit living room where April sat, keeping the room shadowed, much like the secrets she harbored. Turning on a nearby lamp and drawing back the curtains, I illuminated the space, revealing shadows that hinted at the concealed truths my once loving wife held. April looked dreadful. Tear-streaked eyes, pallid complexion, slouched shoulders. All the defiance had melted away, leaving behind the fearful woman I anticipated. Yet it felt too late for such a transformation. Instead of offering solace, her newfound vulnerability disgusted me. Was she truly remorseful now, or simply scared? I couldn't believe such a drastic change in mere minutes. No, this was the opening salvo in our power struggle, a deceitful wife concealing her infidelity. Her face betrayed not regret, but deception and guile. I confronted her, demanding, "Who is he? What does he offer that I don't?" She remained silent until I was certain she wouldn't respond. As I turned to leave, she finally spoke. "His identity doesn't matter. It's not about you, Chris. I'm deeply sorry you found out like this. I never intended to hurt you. I never wanted you to discover this. I'm truly sorry. You heard my conversation with Robin. Please, you must understand. It's funny. No apologies for the act, no remorse for its occurrence, just regret for being caught and you learning the truth." I shook my head, sinking into the plush armchair she gifted me on our 5th anniversary. I once cherished it, but now it was just furniture. "Please, let me explain. Our story doesn't have to end here. We can salvage what we had. If only you'd try to understand, we could move forward." She pleaded with me, a familiar expression when she desired something I disagreed with. "Can you promise it's over? That you'll never see him again?" I maintained a calm tone, but my body tensed, hands gripping the chair's arms tightly for control. April met my gaze with tear-filled eyes but offered no reply. That silence spoke volumes. She wouldn't cease. I heard her words to Robin. She sought both paths and wouldn't let me hinder her. She wasn't willing to relinquish him and sought my approval. "I believe this is your decision. After dinner, I'll tuck the boys in, then we can explore our options. Tomorrow, I'll pack my belongings and stay with my brother." Rising, I exited to the kitchen, a refuge amidst turmoil. It's odd how the kitchen becomes a sanctuary in dire times. Strange thoughts surface when your world crumbles. It's even stranger to realize your world is crumbling. April busied herself with dinner while I spent quality time with the boys in the playroom. Engrossed in their game, April called us for dinner, prompting a noisy transition as I ushered the boys to the bathroom to wash up. Mundane tasks, an anchor in chaos. Dinner was lively. The boys, full of energy, relished the meal and each other's company, contrasting sharply with their subdued parents lost in thought over looming decisions. The innocence of childhood slipping away. Why do kids yearn to grow up? They perceive adult freedom as boundless, unaware of the consequences and responsibilities. Adults, however, understand better, yet some disregard limits and consequences, like April. Post-dinner, April cleaned the kitchen while I escorted the boys to bed. We shared stories until they settled down, drifting into slumber where dreams knew no bounds. My heart ached as I watched, knowing this too must end. Downstairs, I sank into a chair, grasping for stability. My world slipped away beyond my control. Though I loved April deeply, her words echoed in my mind. He never made me feel this way, and I'm his strumpet. There was no turning back from those words. As I pondered the possibilities, I felt the love within me extinguish. April entered and took a seat. "We need to talk. I understand you're upset, but you must grasp my perspective. What I share with Carl is purely physical and the allure of novelty." I anticipate it'll fade soon, but currently I can't seem to break away. It's what stimulates me, but it doesn't affect my love for you. He's merely a distraction, nothing more. It'll end soon and we can return to how things were. You just have to let it run its course." Her words flowed, but I struggled to comprehend. "I can't resist this. I can't stop seeing him. Should I allow this to continue? Is she irrational or just deluded? Regardless, it must cease. Clearly, you're the one failing to grasp reality. There's no us. There's no we. It's just you and him. That's all that remains. It's over between us. Finished. Done. This isn't up for negotiation, and I won't budge. You need to understand this. Despite 8 years of marriage, you can't possibly believe I'd condone your affair." "But Chris, I love you. You're the only man I've ever loved. I don't even like Carl. Please try to understand. Give me time. Please, baby, for the sake of our marriage and family, give me time. Take all the time you need. Tomorrow I'll contact a lawyer and we'll divide everything equally. I don't want to hurt you like you hurt me. I just want this to end now." Emotionally drained, I yearned to retire to bed, seeking respite from the heartache. My headache had subsided, but the anguish remained. Yet, I wasn't prepared for her next words. "Then damn you, no divorce. I'll fight you every step of the way and take everything you have. I'll ensure you don't get custody of the boys, and I'll restrict your visitation rights in every way possible. If you don't comply, you'll lose everything, and I'll still have Carl. You can't stop me. Remember that." I absorbed her threat. Then it struck me that this marriage had been over long ago. The level of anger and disrespect wasn't abrupt. It was calculated and deliberate. She never fretted over hurting me. If she had, she wouldn't have embarked on this path. She would have terminated it beforehand. Instead, she anticipated my discovery. Rather than ending her affair, she opted to inflict maximum pain upon me. Love had no place here, only greed and the urge to degrade me. As my anger simmered, I saw her face register that she had gone too far. Her expression, warped by her venomous words, shifted from contentment to fear. My words followed. "I have one thing to say, April. When you corner a rat, it fights back. It'll fight to the bitter end if you deny it any chance of escape. You should have known that before pushing me. But now you've done it, and you'll pay the price. Please, Chris, I don't want this, but I'm left with no choice. I love you, and will do anything to keep you from leaving. If you don't understand and accept this, I'll fight you. You'll have no option but to stay with me. I know you. You love me and the boys too much to leave. I know you, Chris. You'll stay. Goodbye, April. Let the boys know I'll see them when I can. I'll gather some belongings and leave. I'll retrieve the rest later when we can arrange a time." Upstairs, I hastily packed a bag for a day or so. Just essentials from the bathroom, a few changes of clothes. Not much after 8 years of marriage. All that remained were bitter memories. But I had 2 wonderful sons, and that was my focus now. Descending, I found April seated by the kitchen door. Evidently, she was prepared to try again. "Chris, please reconsider. I'm begging you." "There's no need. Promise me you'll end things with him. You'll never see him again. Just say it and maybe there's hope." "I can't. I just can't. Please." I pushed past her, fighting the urge to strike her with all my might. But I knew controlling the anger inside wouldn't be easy. So I restrained myself. "I'll visit in the evenings after work so the boys won't notice anything right away." I swung open the door and stepped outside. It slammed shut behind me as I tossed my bag into the back seat and climbed into my truck. Backing out of the garage, I dialed Clyde, my brother, on my cell phone. He lived about 10 miles away. Ever since his wife left with her boyfriend 2 years ago, he'd been living alone, clueless about her whereabouts and indifferent to her absence. Despite not divorcing, Clyde refused to let it hold him back. He'd become quite the drinker, often indulging with his buddies almost every night. We'd discussed it, but Clyde never changed his ways. He rarely got drunk, though. He was just usually high. Perhaps he was trying to bury memories. That was my take, at least. He listened, as I explained, and instructed me to head over. He'd be home later. So I drove to his place, retrieved the spare key from under the flower pot on the porch, and let myself in. Everything was immaculate, as always. Clyde was far from messy. He was compulsively tidy. Always had been. It offered a sense of solace to see that despite my life crumbling, his remained unchanged. I grabbed a few beers from the fridge and settled in, just as he'd advised. By the time he returned, I was pleasantly intoxicated. I fetched another beer from the store and continued drinking. When Clyde arrived, I simply informed him of the fight with April, and he joined in, drinking the remainder of his beer to keep me in check. He assured me of his support, emphasizing our bond as brothers. The next morning, I awoke with a punishing hangover and a pounding headache. My excessive drinking was solely my doing. Despite having reasons, it was no excuse. I stumbled into the shower, letting the cold water wash away the remnants of intoxicant in my system. Staying drunk serves no purpose. I searched for Clyde and found a note indicating he was at work and would report me, which wasn't unexpected since we both had Saturday shifts. Clyde and I were employed by a company renting heavy construction equipment to major contractors statewide. Our reputation as top-notch mechanics drew customers from far and wide. Our task was to keep the machinery operational no matter the challenges. The job demanded long hours, but provided the income necessary to support my family, a responsibility I couldn't shirk. I understood the importance of continuing to earn the money that supported April's pride and joy, the spacious house. I viewed it as a haven for our family, a source of pride in providing for them. However, April seemed to perceive it differently. To her, it was a safety net, a leverage for potential divorce proceedings. She coveted the house and my earnings not for our family's security, but to fund indulgences for her lover. Lavish clothing, trips to Victoria's Secret, lingerie purchases. I turned up the faucet to drown out these unsettling thoughts, even though I was running late. I needed to escape to work, where I could focus, strategize, and make decisions. Tasks I couldn't manage in my current state. April had clearly plotted this in advance, anticipating my shock upon discovering her betrayal and knowing I wouldn't think clearly. She had manipulated the situation to portray me as the villain for disapproving of her affair, stacking the deck in her favor. I dressed and fetched a box of large trash bags, anticipating April's departure with the boys to her mother's house. Inside, I emptied my closet and drawers into the bags, gathering essential items from the bathroom into a smaller bag. Laden with bags, I loaded them into my truck's back seat and returned inside. I wouldn't leave just yet. I intended to return after work to spend time with the children. I had much to ponder and decide. One thing was certain. My marriage was over, and April would never again be my wife, lover, or confidant. She belonged to someone else now. As I pondered, tears welled up uncontrollably, and I sank to the floor of what once was our bedroom, succumbing to grief. Loss weighs heavily, especially in the workplace. I threw myself into my duties, toiling relentlessly even through lunch breaks, eager to drown out thoughts of home, wife, and children, amidst the challenges of fuel injectors, timing chains, and fuel pumps. I tackled the toughest tasks without complaint, consumed by a fervor to bury myself in work. 10 hours later, Clyde interrupted, urging me to take a break. "Dude, ease up. You're making the rest of us look like slackers," he remarked, watching me with a mixture of surprise and concern. "Sorry, little brother. Just trying to lose myself in it all, just trying to forget." My bad. I must have seemed on the verge of tears as Clyde guided me off the shop floor and into the break area. Clyde and I had been inseparable since our parents' tragic accident a decade ago. He had been my best man at the wedding, and 8 years ago he became the godfather to my boys, Chris Jr. and Charlie. Seated at the table, I stared blankly as Clyde poured us each a cup of hot coffee, devoid of flavor but comforting in its warmth. "All right, spill it. Lay it all out. No holding back," Clyde encouraged, prompting me to recount the ordeal in detail. For the next 10 minutes, I poured out to Clyde every ounce of shame, humiliation, and contempt April had heaped upon me. I divulged her menacing threats, her calculated attempts to undermine any retaliation on my part while safeguarding her affair. I recounted the disdain on her face as she boasted to Robin about her tryst and the cold determination in her threats to strip me of everything. She made it abundantly clear that her lover's gratification was paramount, unwilling to relinquish him for anything. Clyde was taken aback. He had always regarded April highly, seeing her as a virtuous woman and dedicated mother. His brother had never hinted at any marital issues, leading Clyde to believe their union was solid. Now, faced with the reality of Chris's pain and anguish, it pained Clyde just to witness it. Chris was a pillar of strength, a devoted father, a reliable provider, and a trusted confidant for the guys in the garage, always there when needed. Over the years, he had gone above and beyond to help others. Yet, Clyde's shock turned to anger. How could April do this to Chris? What was wrong with her? His indignation swelled as he observed his brother and closest friend shattered and defeated. "Chris, listen to me. You can't just accept this. We have to take action. Let me and the guys lend a hand. This is unbearable." Clyde implored, concern etched on his rugged features. It was genuine care for his brother, palpable in the air. Chris met his gaze with a despondent expression. What can I do? If I divorce her, she'll strip me of everything. Child support, alimony, the house, the car. You know I'd never injure the kids. She's using them as pawns against me. And now that idiot she's fooling around with will replace their father. He's an idiot who thinks it's okay to bet another man's wife. I'm powerless. Clyde shook his head vehemently. To hell with both of them. I used to love April like a sister, but she's made her bed, and now she'll have to lie in it. We need to go after both of them. First step, figure out who he is. That's the easy part. Let me make a couple calls, then we'll discuss, Clyde declared. I simply shrugged. All right, but I'm not sure what you expect me to do. She doesn't share anything about him with me. Doesn't matter. We'll track him down and expose him like we would anyone else. And you realize you can't take April back, right? What she did makes reconciliation impossible. If you condone her actions, she'll never respect you again. No way, man. She's someone else's plaything now. His words caught me off guard momentarily, but then a faint smile crept onto my face. You're right. She's not my beloved wife anymore. Last night taught me how swiftly love can morph into hatred, and my animosity towards her today eclipses any love I ever had for her. Last night she stole that from me and turned it against herself. I made that clear to her. We continued chatting a bit more, then wrapped up work without any extra hours. We headed to a nearby bar with no intention of getting drunk. This was business. Plans needed to be made. Clyde made a few more calls and we sat down to strategize. I was touched by the unwavering support from my friends. They didn't pry, just wanted to know how they could assist. Together, we devised a feasible plan. At 7 that evening, I pulled into my driveway and entered the house. It struck me as funny. This was no longer my home. It was just a place to stay. Shedding my jacket in the kitchen, I made my way to the living room. There, April sat in her chair, watching Chris and Charlie, our 5-year-old twins, engrossed in a video game. I stood there, capturing the scene in my mind forever. April met my gaze as I glanced at her, her faint smile now revealing its true contempt for me and our facade of family unity. It was all a charade, orchestrated by her deception. Now I saw and understood. I returned her gaze with a look of disdain, devoid of any smile. When I turned away, she averted her eyes. Heading to the kitchen, I peered into the fridge, pulling out what appeared to be leftover fried chicken and mashed potatoes, reheating them in the microwave. I wasn't hungry, but I needed the distraction. I had intended to speak with the boys before their bedtime, but Clyde advised against it, urging me to postpone the conversation for now. But when I do address them, it will mark the first move in the battle initiated by April. I might have lost, undoubtedly, but I would fight to the end. Seated with my plate, I began to eat slowly, the food offering little satisfaction but necessary for sustenance. About halfway through, April joined me at the table, sitting across from me. I glanced at her briefly before returning my focus to my meal, chewing deliberately. There were no words exchanged. I had nothing to say to her at the moment. Are you feeling more composed after last night? Can we engage in a civilized conversation now? Her words caught me off guard. Civilized adults? How about a cheating woman and her betrayed husband? That's more realistic. Opting for silence instead, I withheld my response. Are you going to ignore me now? Acting childish and silent? I had higher expectations of you, Chris. We need to consider the children now. You must remember your role as their father in this household. Am I truly their father now? It makes me wonder. Maybe I should confirm with some tests. Let's keep this civil, without anger, just a simple statement. April's expression darkened with fury, poised to retort when I calmly interjected. Watch your tone, April. The children might overhear if you start shouting. Remember them? The ones you accused me of neglecting last night when I got upset? Well, now it's your turn to remember. Reflect on what you've done to their world. Not only did you indulge in an affair, you shattered our entire family. Think carefully, April. April paused, lowering her voice to a hiss. You didn't seem to consider my words last night. I expected you to move past this and return to normal. Nothing will change at home. I still love you, and you are my husband. That hasn't changed. Neither you nor the children will lose anything familiar. I keep my affairs discreet, conducting my business when they're at school and you're at work. You have nothing to lose, as I'm always here for you. I remained silent, continuing to eat methodically. I maintained a stoic expression, devoid of reaction. My eyes betrayed nothing as I looked at her. Despite the absence of verbal response, my eyes conveyed everything. Slowly, April began to grasp the gravity of the situation. For the first time, a hint of fear flickered through her. "What do you intend to do? Will you make things difficult for me?" "I hoped you loved me enough to grant me this time alone. I told you last night that he didn't take anything from you and that I'll always support you. Why can't you grasp that?" April grew increasingly emotional, while I continued to stare at her, calmly chewing my food. Finally swallowing, I suggested, "Let's save this discussion for after the kids are in bed. I listened to you last night despite my discomfort, but I won't entertain this conversation while the children are awake." April appeared to regain her composure and resumed smiling. "Thank you for that. I think you had some valid points, but your words hurt me. I'll take the boys upstairs soon, and then we can talk." She passed by me, placing her hand on my shoulder. I involuntarily flinched at her touch, causing her to retract her hand. The disgust I felt from that simple gesture was palpable. With the kids, I tried to maintain my usual self, though knowing everything was about to change weighed heavily on me. Yet, I had come to terms with the fact that April's actions had shattered it all for me. Perhaps I should just play the role of the compliant husband and accept her terms. Wait until she's done with her affair. After all, hadn't she claimed she still loved me and wanted to remain married? But I knew I couldn't do it. Not now. Not ever again. Around 9 o'clock, April entered the room where I sat. Letting out a heavy sigh, she settled into a chair and smiled. I put them to bed, and they fell asleep. They're getting too big to tuck in, but they still say goodnight and pretend to sleep. They're good boys. I nodded in agreement. They're wonderful kids. It's unfortunate that they'll have to endure so much pain, and I'm unsure how to ease their suffering. What do you mean? I thought you understood that nothing needs to change. Just give me what I want, and we can return to being the same family we were. Just be patient. I promised it would all be over soon. You won't lose anything. I love you deeply and want to remain your wife. It's just something I have to do. That's all. I gazed at the woman who had been my wife for the past 8 years. I married her because I couldn't imagine life without her. We had 2 amazing children and a solid marriage until last night. Now everything was different, and she couldn't comprehend why I deemed it necessary. I wouldn't delve into the specifics tonight, but I needed to be unequivocal. "April, I heard you out last night. You made your desires clear. You claimed you love me and want to be my wife. You insist he doesn't take anything from me, refuse to disclose his identity because it's none of my business, and you outlined the consequences if I pursued a divorce. You made it abundantly clear that you'll strip everything from me without hesitation, just as you stated. You threatened to take everything, even my boys. That much was evident." April listened, her face displaying anger. She wasn't pleased with my recap of her words. However they sounded, they resonated differently coming from me, but she recognized the truth in what I conveyed. "I perceive that you don't view this situation the same way I do, Chris. I emphasize that this isn't about our marriage, yet you didn't heed my words. Why can't you trust me when I express that I still love you and desire to uphold our marriage? What I heard from you last night, April, was disdain. Disdain toward me and our marriage. When I expressed frustration, you retaliated with premeditated threats. Threats that you had carefully considered before addressing me. Disdain for me, for all my efforts on our behalf over the years. You belittle me, degrade me, threaten me, and accuse me of misunderstanding. You were fully aware that I would react just as I did. Why did you presume to have already determined what to do with me? Why did you believe you had all the answers ready? Now I was starting to feel angered. Up until now, I had remained composed and in control, but that composure was gradually slipping away. April's enraged expression infuriated me. I came to one conclusion that you seemed to overlook last night, April, when you threatened and backed me into a corner, thinking I couldn't find a way out. I mentioned it then, and I'll reiterate it now. Even a rat will fight a cat when cornered and with nothing left to lose. With these words, I stood up and walked away. As I approached the kitchen door where April was seated, I paused. I'm going to stay elsewhere for the night temporarily. I'll return after work so the kids won't notice anything right away. Why are you planning to stay somewhere else? Why not stay here? We can't resolve this problem if you leave. Chris, please don't. I love you and don't want to lose you. I don't know what I'll do if you leave me. Please, Chris, let's attempt to address this. There must be a way to reconcile. I'm sorry, April. The only certainty I have now is that I no longer love you. Your infidelity last night extinguished all my love for you. That's the only thing I know for sure. I'm unsure of what I'll do next, but I'm certain there's no turning back now. Chris, what about your vows to love and cherish me? Have you forgotten them? I also recall your vows to me. You pledged on our wedding day to forsake all others, yet you didn't. You promised to love only me, but you shared what we had with another man. I cared for you, loved you, upheld our marital vows, and gave you everything I had. It wasn't sufficient. You bestowed what was mine upon someone else. You gave it away, shattering my love in the process. So yes, I can move past this. You shattered my love for you into pieces. I can depart, and I will. I headed to Clyde's house, where he welcomed me to stay as long as needed. Time to finish what we started. Soon, it'll all be over, and I'll begin anew. In the following days, I balanced work with evenings spent with my kids. However, I avoided any further interaction with April. Despite her attempts to engage, I walked away each time. On one occasion, she yelled, but I simply left without a word. During a work break, a colleague informed Clyde that preparations were complete and we'd have results in a few days. All that remained was patience. The routine continued unchanged until the following week. Each evening, I returned to an increasingly agitated April. The kids seemed oblivious, but Charlie's question about my long hours prompted reassurance. He seemed satisfied, and the momentary crisis passed. April persisted with questions, but I ignored her, leaving when she took the kids to bed. By week's end, Clyde entered the break room and handed me a folder. Without a word, I opened it to find a brief report. Carl Cummings, a 24-year-old junior attorney at Lincoln, Rice & Holmes. Divorced 2 years ago, financially stable, residing in a condominium where April had visited multiple times that week. Now armed with a name and address, I pondered what allure he held that eluded me. Yet it was no longer my concern. Had April approached me earlier, perhaps this could have been resolved differently. So what's next? What steps should I take? I sought Clyde's guidance. Though the issue was mine, Clyde seemed the one in charge. I was fortunate to have friends and a brother like Clyde. Being a good man and diligent worker sufficed for true friends. Now I needed them more than ever. Everything's underway. The first move happens tonight. I'll call you once it's set. Just keep your phone close. You can inform her and put an end to this mess. Okay. Knowing it needed to be done didn't bring relief. This wasn't my preferred approach. However, April and her lover left me no choice, and I fought back the only way I could. I wasn't a lawyer or a wealthy strategist. I was a mechanic, a hardworking individual who took pride in providing for his family through honest labor. I loved April deeply, but my efforts weren't enough for her. Fine. My plan aligned with my world, and she'd soon realize it. Returning home, I joined my family for dinner as usual. April engaged with the kids, and I participated in conversations and activities, concealing my nervousness. After dinner, I spent quality time with the kids, playing video games and assisting with homework, playing the role of the typical husband and father. April, finishing the dishes, observed the scene, seeming more at ease, perhaps thinking everything would soon return to normal. As I played video games with my boys, Carl Cummings left his office, headed to his car parked across town. He reflected on the intense encounter with April at his place 2 days earlier. She was eager for him, agreeing for the first time to get close when he asked why. After their rendezvous, she revealed her husband had discovered their affair. Shocked, Carl was reassured by her not to worry. It struck him as odd that her husband's knowledge seemed to heighten her adventurousness. Despite this, it was the best physical engaging he'd had, so he brushed it off. Walking past an alley toward his car, he suddenly stumbled, feeling a pull. As he struggled to maintain his balance and avoid falling, someone seized his arms and pulled him down the alley toward the courtyard. Pinned against the building's wall by two imposing figures, one on each side, he strained to discern their faces beneath their black ski masks. Despite their intimidating size, fear began to creep over him. With little cash and no flashy accessories, he wondered what they wanted. A third masked man, wearing gloves, stepped forward and lifted Carl's face with a firm grip under his chin. In a coarse voice, he inquired, "You familiar with a woman named April Phillips?" Idiot. The mention of her name sent a shiver down Carl's spine. Oh no. So that's what this is about? Her darn husband. She never mentioned he was involved. No, I don't know anyone by that name, he stammered, shaking, yet determined to deny everything. The hefty man landed a blow to his ribs, causing excruciating pain and stealing his breath. Dizzy, he saw stars swirling before him. The intense agony gripped him, instilling deep fear. I'll ask again. You familiar with a woman named April Phillips? Idiot. Unable to deceive any longer, Carl abandoned denial. Yes, I know her. Please, God, let me make it out of here alive, he prayed silently. You'll never cross paths with her again. Clear? The imposing figure awaited his response. Crystal clear. Got it? Perhaps it was merely a warning. Got it? He could accept that. I need to ensure you grasp this fully. My pals and I aren't convinced someone like you, messing with other men's wives, is all that bright. So we're going to ensure you comprehend, the big man explained ominously. Ceasing their pressure against the wall, they allowed him to steady himself. The initial blow struck him hard in the groin, causing him to double over. Despite his agony, they prevented him from collapsing, delivering another blow to his ribs. A sharp click signaled a broken rib. Then came a devastating blow to his jaw, nearly toppling him with pain. Subsequent strikes hit him in the groin until, mercifully, he blacked out. They likely continued their assault until they ceased. Gradually brought back to consciousness, they drilled a few words into him repeatedly. His memory faded until he awoke in Memorial Hospital's emergency room. While his injuries weren't life-threatening, he was admitted to the general care unit, heavily medicated and in intense pain. Grateful for his survival, he whispered a prayer. They informed him that she might contact him, instructing him precisely what to say. He recalled the words he needed to convey to her. I deeply apologize, Mrs. Phillips. It was my fault, and I deeply regret it. I will cease all contact with you and your children. I'm sorry our paths ever crossed. Farewell. Carl reclined on the bed, awaiting her call. He rehearsed these words in his mind to avoid any errors. He reminded himself that any deviation would not go unnoticed, and the consequences would be severe. Repeating the phrases to himself once more, he vowed never to pursue a married woman again, regardless of who she may be. Just past 8 in the evening, while playing with the twins, my cell phone rang. Excusing myself to another room, I took the call. Seeing Clyde's caller ID, I heard a brief message. It's done. Lesson 1 completed. He was admitted to the hospital. Then the call ended. Returning to the living room with a smile, April noticed but said nothing, returning a smile herself, interpreting it as good news. Later, April took the children upstairs, casting a questioning glance at me. Assuring her I'd be there when she returned, she smiled broadly and went about putting the children to bed. Settling into the living room, I waited in anticipation. The moment of reckoning had arrived. As April returned with a coffee pot and cups, she suggested we talk further. Noting my apparent resignation, she expressed relief, professing her love and fear of losing me over such trivial matters in comparison to our relationship's depth. I observed her as she spoke, her beauty still captivating me. After all, she was the woman I'd cherished for so long, envisioning a future of growing old together. But now, those plans, those dreams, lay shattered. Let the end commence. Now, April, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully, I began. I know your lover's name is Carl Cummings, a junior associate at Lincoln, Rice & Holmes. I know all about him, including your 2 meetings with him this week. April appeared surprised, poised to respond, but I motioned for her to remain silent. That's the issue. You threatened me with divorce. When I expressed my anger, you threatened to strip away everything I have. I remember your exact words etched into my mind. You said, I'll take everything you have. You said more, but those were the words that lingered, words dripping with contempt that shattered our marriage. Those were the words that pushed me into a corner, where I felt I had no choice but to watch you engage in closeness with another man. I told you the following night that cornered rats fight back. Now, I could see the initial flickers of fear and discomfort on her face. She wasn't certain what lay ahead, but she was savvy enough to realize it wouldn't be to her liking. Her shoulders tensed, and she instinctively withdrew her head in defense. I know you told Robin that I never made you feel the way you felt with him, that you were his mistress, I continued. I don't regret that this will end in a manner unfavorable to you. However, Mr. Cummings has been explicitly informed that his involvement with you is over. He'll never see you again or engage in any further closeness with you. Never. He was also cautioned against any contact with my sons, to which he agreed. Watching her face register shock and disbelief, I proceeded. I'll initiate divorce proceedings citing infidelity with no spousal support for you. Child support will be provided for my sons, ensuring they lack nothing as long as you fulfill your duties. I'll ensure you have the means, but you'll need to work for your own desires. I'll handle the paperwork, and you'll be served. April rose, anger evident on her face. You're delusional if you think I'll agree to this, and I'll take everything you have just as I promised, she retorted, still defiant despite her fear. She intended to bluff until the very end, as she had strategized. "Why don't you call your Mr. Cummings right now? Let's see his response. Oh, wait, I believe you might need to dial the hospital. That call I received earlier informed me he's in the emergency room at Memorial. I presume the news has reached you by now. Use my phone. I already have his number." April gazed at me in shock. "What have you done? What happened to Carl? Oh my God. Chris, what did you do?" "Why, April, are you seriously asking me? I've been here at home with you all evening, and I was at work earlier, so I couldn't have done anything to anyone. Why do you think I did something? Why would I even think to injure your lover? You made it abundantly clear that I should steer clear of this situation. It's none of my concern." My demeanor surely frightened April. She had never seen me like this. I was typically calm and passive, never causing injury to anyone. I wouldn't even discipline the children physically, leaving that to her. Now, she viewed me differently. My expression was cold and stern, my eyes devoid of emotion. April entered the next room, and I overheard her speaking on the phone. She returned with tears in her eyes, collapsing into a chair and staring into the distance. I remained composed, picking up the newspaper. I knew what she had heard on the phone. Her lover was ending things with her, faced with the choice of that or enduring a smacking each time he encountered her. That was the ultimatum delivered to him by 3 imposing men who intercepted him as he left work earlier. They made it clear why they targeted him and what repercussions awaited if he dared to see or speak to April again. They ensured he fully comprehended the message. April dried her tears, took a deep breath, and addressed me. "Well, it seems you've gotten your way. Carl informed me he never wants to see me again. He mentioned that all my belongings will be returned to me and he has no desire to communicate with me." "In that case, you have nothing to fret over. I have legal representation, so they will handle everything swiftly," I responded, setting the newspaper aside and rising to depart. "I'll speak with the boys this weekend and explain why we're divorcing. Perhaps they're mature enough to grasp the situation. If not, they'll eventually understand as they grow older." As I made my exit, I glanced back to see April sobbing. "If I recall your words correctly, April, you once claimed this affair would be short-lived and we could return to normalcy," I chuckled bitterly. "You're still young and attractive, April. Maybe you'll find someone willing to indulge your fantasies. Someone open to an unconventional marriage, allowing you to pursue multiple partners. That wasn't me, but that's just my perspective. Best of luck." Children may not comprehend this, but adults must face the consequences of their actions, and those consequences can be harsh.